Hey, Mike here. I just wanted to let you know that you can listen to Dark Poutine early and ad-free on Amazon Music, included with Prime.
Wyndham Hotels and Resorts makes travel possible for all. Whether it's the long haulers looking for a great cup of coffee, a roomier rest for the on-a-whim road trippers, or a place to make summer memories with the whole family. No matter who you are, where you're going, or why, with 24 trusted brands to choose from like La Quinta, Days Inn, and Super 8, your Wyndham is waiting. Get the lowest price at WyndhamHotels.com. Restrictions apply. Visit website for more details.
Welcome back to Dark Poutine. I am Mike Brown.
And I'm Matthew Stockton, and we're coming at you from British Columbia,
The
Canada.
BC, yeah, the left coast.
The left coast.
Yeah.
It's
Anyway.
very, very sunny today, and I'm wondering when it's going to properly start warming up. It seems like it's been cold for a long time now, Mike.
A little chillier than it was last year this time, that's for sure, but you know what? I'm good with it. I have to put on my little yoga jacket and go outside. I should probably start doing yoga if I have a jacket.
It's so BC to have a yoga jacket.
You're right. Oh, dear. Okay. In the mid-century, Winnipeg expanded its boundaries and solidified its status by creating Unicity in 1972, streamlining governance and urban planning. By 1981, Winnipeg was known for its cultural diversity and as a regional economic hub, setting the stage for future developments.
The Peg.
The Peg.
Yeah, I think we discussed this before, but I love this story. It used to be colloquially be called Chicago of the North because,
Yes.
Believe it or not, at the turn of the century, Chicago and Winnipeg were actual rivals. Before World War I, Winnipeg was actually the fastest growing city in North America. And by 1911, it was the third largest city in Canada. Winnipeg, like Chicago, was an international finance, industry, and transportation hub. I mean, it's hard. If you've gone there now, it's hard to believe that.
Yeah.
But from the late 1800s to early 1900s, Chicago architects came to Winnipeg to practice their art. And many of the buildings they designed in the Exchange District are from Chicago architects. And of course, that style influenced local architects. So the city started looking like Chicago. It's a very cool story.
Well, that's fun. So
Yeah.
I wonder if they were building for wind, because isn't Chicago the windy city? And
Windy and cold, and so is Winterpeg.
Yeah, exactly.
Winterpeg.
So before we get started with the show, Matthew, you mentioned to me that you wanted to do a special shout out.
Yeah, so Steve and I were on the Aquabus.
Mm-hmm. Oh, as you are usually.
As we are, and start a conversation with somebody who listens to the show.
Oh, did she recognize you or?
Yeah, so I said to Jenny, I'd shout out and say hi.
Yep.
And Jenny told me that at one point in time she's having chemotherapy and television visuals made her feel woozy. So Dark Poutine was one of her favorite shows that she used to listen to while she was doing chemo. And I love when I meet people who tell us, A, that they listen, because I'm always grateful, but
Sure.
B, that we were there during a hard time.
You meet all kinds of people who listen. I don't meet anybody.
It's because I talk to everybody, Mike.
Yeah, I don't. I don't leave the house.
Even one of the captains of the ferry was like, by the time we go from one dock to the next, you have like 5 new best friends on the boat with you.
Oh, dear.
He said that to me.
Well, thanks, Jenny.
For listening.
Yes, much appreciated.
The views, information, and opinions expressed during the Dark Poutine podcast are solely those of the producer and do not necessarily represent those of Curious Cast, its affiliate, Global News, nor their parent company, Chorus Entertainment.
Dark Poutine is not for the faint of heart or squeamish. Listener discretion is strongly advised. We're not experts on the topics we present, nor are we journalists. We're 2 ordinary Canadians chatting about crime and the dark side of history. Let's get to it. Put on your toque, grab yourself a double-double and a Nanaimo bar. It's time to scarf down some dark poutine.
You are responsible for obtaining and maintaining at your own cost all equipment needed to listen to dark poutine. Dark poutine can be addictive. Side effects may include, but not be limited to, pausing and questioning the system, elevated heart rate, pondering humanity, odd looks from colleagues as you laugh out loud at work, family members not into true crime worrying about you. Positive side effects may include some perspectives and opinions that you disagree with, as well as some wokeness and empathy. If you don't think dark poutine is for you, consult your doctor immediately.
Barbara Gayle Stoppel, a 16-year-old waitress working alone, was tragically murdered on December 23, 1981, in the women's washroom of Ideal Donut Shop in Winnipeg, Manitoba. She was strangled with a twine, and despite being found alive, she succumbed to that and her other injuries after 6 days on life support. The murder case quickly became notorious not only due to its brutal nature, but also because of the wrongful conviction of Thomas Sophonow, who was initially accused of the crime. Sophonow underwent 3 separate trials. The first ended with a hung jury, and the second and third led to convictions ultimately overturned by the Manitoba Court of Appeal. The Supreme Court of Canada refused to hear a Crown appeal, leading to Sophonow's final acquittal. This case is frequently cited as a significant example of a miscarriage of justice involving flawed eyewitness identifications and police misconduct during the interrogation process. Despite Sophonow's exoneration, the actual perpetrator remained at large until a reinvestigation of the case pointed to another suspect, Terry Samuel Arnold, who was already known to police for similar offenses, having left a trail of depravity, sexual assaults, and suspected murder in his wake. This revelation came too late to be pursued thoroughly, as Arnold died by suicide in 2005. The impact of this case has been profound, leading to public scrutiny over police procedures and the reliability of witness testimony. It has also been the subject of several books and a public inquiry which sought to prevent such injustices in the future. This is Dark Poutine, episode 315, More Than Meets the Eye, the murder of Barbara Stoppel. Winnipeg, the capital of Manitoba, has a rich history shaped by its strategic location at the confluence of the Red and Assiniboine rivers. Originally a key gathering place for Indigenous peoples, it became a central hub for European fur traders in the late 17th century. The area saw significant growth with establishing the Red River Colony in 1812 and subsequent settlement. The arrival of the Canadian Pacific Railway in the 1880s spurred a population and construction boom, transforming Winnipeg into a significant transportation and economic center known as the Gateway to the West. The early 20th century marked the Winnipeg General Strike of 1919, reflecting social and economic challenges. In the mid-century, Winnipeg expanded its boundaries and solidified its status by creating Unicity in 1972, streamlining governance and urban planning. By 1981, Winnipeg was known for its cultural diversity and as a regional economic hub, setting the stage for future developments.
The Peg.
The Peg.
Yeah, I think we discussed this before, but I love this story. It used to be colloquially be called Chicago of the North because, believe it or not, at the turn of the century, Chicago and Winnipeg were actual rivals. Before World War I, Winnipeg was actually the fastest growing city in North America. By 1911, it was the 3rd largest city in Canada. Winnipeg, like Chicago, was an international finance, industry, and transportation hub. I mean, it's hard. If you've gone there now, it's hard to believe that.
Yeah.
But from the late 1800s to early 1900s, Chicago architects came to Winnipeg to practice their art. And many of the buildings they designed in the Exchange District are from Chicago architects. And of course, that style influenced local architects. So the city started looking like Chicago. It's a very cool story.
Oh, that's fun. So I wonder if they were building for wind, because isn't Chicago the windy city? And
windy and cold, and so is Winnipeg.
Yeah, exactly. Retired detective sergeant with the Winnipeg Police Service, Andrew Mikolajewski's book on the Barbara Stoppel murder and subsequent investigation, titled Stoppel, gives more insight into Barbara Stoppel's short life. Barbara Gayle, Barb Stoppel, born on August 9, 1965 in Winnipeg, was the youngest in a family of 3 children to Muriel and Fred Stoppel, residing in Norwood Flats. At the time of her death, she was the only sibling still at home, with her older brother Rick, 23, and sister Roxanne married and living elsewhere in Winnipeg. At 16 years old, Barb was a grade 10 student at Nelson McIntyre Collegiate, where she excelled academically and participated actively in volleyball and basketball. Barb also pursued her passions for roller skating at Saints Roller Rink and acting, recently earning the lead role in her school's annual play, And Then There Were None. Her involvement in sports and the arts enhanced her social life, where she was recognized for her kindness, friendliness, and maturity, often connecting with friends older than herself. Many believe Barb had the potential to become a successful actress, a goal supported by her studies at the Manitoba Theatre Workshop. As Christmas 1981 approached, Barb excitedly shopped for the holiday. She had recently obtained part-time employment as a waitress at the Ideal Donut Shop on 49 Goulet Street near her home to earn spending money and feel more independent. She was comfortable with customer conversations and demonstrated a confident yet caring nature. She was charismatic and lovely and quickly became a favorite among the donut shop's patrons. She was a great co-worker, too, amenable to shift changes to accommodate others and working extra hours if needed. She had carefully selected Christmas gifts for her family and friends, including a salt and pepper shakers, candles, spices, and Rubik's Cubes, which she had delivered to her friend Jody on December 22nd. Her thoughtful list of presents for her family included stockings and a dog calendar for her grandmother, hydroculture for her mom, jams for her dad, a cat calendar and London, Iowa teas for her brother Rick and his wife Bess, and a bird-related gift for sister Roxy and her hubby Dave. She picked out a football jersey for Daryl, her new boyfriend whom she'd met at a party, and they'd been dating for just about a month. Sure, Barb did all the typical teenage stuff like neglecting her chores for which she'd been grounded. However, everyone who knew Barb Stoppel thought she was going places and that her future looked brighter than most until the night of December 23rd, 1981.
You know, Mike, it never changes. Whenever we dig into the story and find out about the person who was murdered, it's always the same when I first read the scripts that you send me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to stop the script almost like I can go back in time and write a different story for her.
Yeah, and then she locked the door on this creepy guy, and nothing ever happened.
At the end, and Mike and I didn't need to do the podcast, right? Right. And right now, our listeners are listening to the story of someone they didn't know. Maybe some people did know her, but majority of our listeners didn't. But you look at her. She's a great kid. She was loved. Mm-hmm. She is an individual person, but in a way, she is us, isn't she? Yeah. She could have been any of us, hardworking, normal people, and that's the only time I'm ever going to call myself a normal. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And And when you really start empathizing and understanding that this is a human being that had so much ahead of her, you'd realize how much of a total tragedy it was, even though we've never met her. And not just for her friends and family, but for all of us, really, right? It's I always wish I could change these stories.
Yeah, me too. Barb was scheduled for an evening shift at the Ideal Donut Shop for only 5 hours, from 4 to 9 p.m. At 3:30 p.m., she was dressed and ready for work, out the back door of the Stoppel family's Ferndale Avenue home, saying goodbye to her mother for what would be the last time. Vladimir Ududek, the owner of Ideal Donut Shops, was in the shop that night to give Barbara Stoppel her pay. He withdrew some cash from the register and left $33 in it. A regular customer was already in the store as Ududek entered, and the patron had finished up and gone by the time Mr. Ududek left around 8:10 p.m. Shortly after, Barbara Stoppel is known to have made a brief phone call to a friend. Barb planned to attend 2 parties with friends after her shift. Barb, now alone, went about prepping for the store closing. Working at the Boots drugstore in the Dominion Shopping Center, Lorraine Janauer walked to the nearby Ideal Donut Shop to buy coffee only minutes after Mr. Ududek departed. She noticed a man she didn't recognize inside locking the front door, which she found odd. The man looked out of place. He was a white man in his early 20s with notable acne, unkempt brown hair, a long mustache, and sideburns. He was dressed distinctively in a cowboy hat, brown boots, tight jeans, a plaid shirt, and a dark jacket with possible yellow stripes. Lorraine saw the man and the waitress, we now know was Barb, walk to the rear of the shop and enter the women's washroom together. Concerned, Lorraine returned to work and with the help of a coworker tried to contact Mr. Ududek and then the donut shop directly, but received no answers, heightening her alarm. Around 8:30 p.m., Norman Janauer, Lorraine's husband, arrived at the drugstore to pick her up from work. She informed him about the suspicious activity she'd witnessed at the donut shop, and Norman agreed to look into it. John Dirksen attempted to visit the Ideal Donut Shop at around 8:35 p.m. but found the front door locked and the shop apparently empty. Dirksen was wearing a snowsuit as he had been outside all evening selling Christmas trees in the shopping center's parking lot. He wanted a cup of coffee to warm up before heading home for the evening. After waiting outside for about 5 minutes, Norman Janauer joined him. Dirksen and Janauer then saw the man in the cowboy hat coming out of the women's washroom and walking toward the front door. The stranger was carrying a small cardboard box. The man unlocked the door, telling Dirksen and Janauer not to bother going inside. The store was closed, he said. The man then ran past the McDonald's toward the Norwood Bridge. Entering the donut shop and finding no response when he called out, Mr. Janauer proceeded to the back. He opened the women's washroom door and discovered Barbara Stoppel collapsed on the floor, twine around her neck, blood splashed onto the wall beside her. Mr. Janauer was convinced the man in the cowboy hat was responsible. Norman called out to John Dirksen to chase after the stranger. Janauer then returned to the drugstore and immediately instructed his wife to call the police and an ambulance. Dirksen grabbed a baseball bat from the nearby Domo gas station and pursued the man. He managed to catch up with him partway across the bridge, where a confrontation ensued. As the man brandished a knife, Dirksen wisely retreated. Dirksen later recalled that he had observed the man tossing the cardboard box off the bridge. When Dirksen went back to the shopping center, he saw the police cars were already there. Somewhat in shock and not wanting to be in the way, Dirksen went home and drank a few beers. He didn't speak to the police for the first time after the incident until he called the hospital later that night to ask about Barb Stoppel. These weren't the only witnesses. Among others who'd seen the stranger was Paul McDougald. He arrived at the shopping center around 8:25 p.m. His truck was positioned so that he could see in the Ideal Donut Shop. While his wife visited the Boots drugstore, he stayed in his truck and noticed the man inside the donut shop conversing with the waitress. He watched as the pair inside engaged in a brief conversation, then proceeded to the back of the shop, led by the man. After a while, they continued talking at the rear of the shop, and then the man returned to the front to lock the door. Both then entered the ladies' washroom. Following this, McDougall went to speak with Lorraine Janauer in the drugstore before returning to his truck. He continued to monitor the donut shop without noticing further developments, and then reported the suspicious behavior to the manager of G&T Television, in front of which he was parked. Together, they watched as the man exited the washroom, switched the open-close sign to closed, unlocked the door, and hurriedly left the shop carrying a brown cardboard box, passing John Dirksen and Norman Janauer, running past McDonald's and toward the bridge. That same evening, at around 8:45 p.m., as Marcel Glue drove over the Norwood Bridge, he observed a man at the side of the bridge discarding items into the river below. He also noticed another man, John Dirksen, dressed in a snowmobile suit and wielding a baseball bat running toward the first man on the bridge.
I can't remember another episode where we've had so many witnesses of
the immediate aftermath.
Yeah, and we don't see that very often. It's just, that really stands out in this story.
Yeah. Constable Gary Schmidt, a rookie officer, was one of the first on the scene. After being directed inside Ideal Donut, he found Barb unconscious and lying on her back in the women's bathroom in an unusual position. Her head was tilted and pressed against the wall, her legs fully extended toward the toilet, and her left arm was trapped underneath her body. Her face and hands displayed a purplish discoloration, indicating a lack of oxygen. Additionally, there were minor bloodstains on the south wall about 4 inches above the floor and traces of blood around her mouth and teeth. Upon checking her pulse, the officer discovered a green and yellow nylon twine wrapped tightly around her neck, which had not been initially visible to those who found her. Schmidt quickly removed the twine and placed it on the bathroom sink. The ambulance arrived moments later and Barb Stoppel was whisked off to nearby St. Boniface Hospital, where doctors tried to save her life. The women's washroom at the Ideal Donut shop displayed signs of a struggle, with small blood stains on the floor, south wall, and sink. There was also an overturned wastebasket with its contents scattered. When Mr. Ududik, the owner, arrived and checked the cash register, he discovered that the $33 he'd left that evening was missing. However, there was $24.75 remaining in Barb's purse. Perhaps the theft of the money in the cash register was an afterthought to cover up the true motive for the crime: sexual assault. During their investigation, police found several items under the bridge directly beneath where the altercation with the suspect happened. These items included a green and yellow nylon rope identical to that used to strangle Barb Stoppel and the small cardboard box. Additionally, footprints leading from the bridge to the railway tracks indicated the suspect's path, although further tracking was hindered by snow and recent footprints from railroad employees. Police also recovered 2 pairs of gloves, 1 tan leather, and 1 black and white woven, with the latter entwined with the crime-related nylon rope. Barb Stoppel tragically passed away on December 29th after her mother kept vigil by her hospital bedside throughout Christmas. The cause of Barbara's death was determined to be strangulation.
It's so close to saving her. It's such a shame. We don't often, again, this story, we don't often see people going to the hospital and then dying in our shows.
No, they're usually passed away.
For her family and friends to have that hope and to lose it would have been devastating. And I almost wonder what's better. It's maybe they had an opportunity to say goodbye in a way. I don't know. It's just devastating. Though.
And the fact that it happened over the holidays.
Yeah.
Like
Merry Christmas.
So every year at Christmas, they're reminded of this.
Just horrible.
Yeah. Again, the eyewitnesses consistently described the man seen at the donut shop as a 21 to 30-year-old male with brown hair, possibly a reddish hue, and a scruffy appearance, including scraggly sideburns and noticeable acne pockmarks on the left side of his face. He sported a longish mustache and was tall, between 6'1" and 6'3", with a slim build and weighed between 145 and 185 pounds. His attire included prescription glasses, a black or dark cowboy hat, and a dark waist-length coat, blue jeans, and round-toed or cowboy boots. He may have been wearing black or white work gloves, tan leather gloves, and a ring on his left finger. Based on these descriptions, a composite drawing was created by a police artist and circulated throughout the media. This, along with an $8,500 reward offered by the Winnipeg police, led to the WPS receiving over 700 tips about potential suspects. Every tip would need to be run down by the police force under intense public and media pressure to solve the case. The twine used in the crime was tracked back to Powers Twine in Everson, Washington, and apparently had been sold in the Vancouver area to BC Hydro. This led Winnipeg police to believe the murderer had ties to British Columbia, so they began to focus on potential suspects with that in mind. We'll be back after a quick break.
If you're looking for a smoking gun, I can absolutely guarantee you, you will not find it.
In October 2001, a series of letters filled with a deadly powder called anthrax were dropped into the U.S. mail system. What started as an unprecedented case turned into an unsettling mystery. Who sent these deadly letters, and why? From Campside Media and Sony Music Entertainment, I'm Josh Dean, and this is Cover Up Season 4, The Anthrax Threat, available now.
And we are back. Matthew, thoughts so far?
Well, at this point, I was really interested to hear the rest of the story and how with so many witnesses, right?
Right.
And witnesses that just didn't see, oh, there's somebody in a balaclava running away, I saw from 45 feet.
Yeah, they got a good look at him.
They spoke with him. They fought him on a bridge, right?
Yep.
With that many proper witnesses, how the wrong person could have been convicted of the crime. And I'm looking forward into digging into the flaws in eyewitness testimony here.
Yeah. Investigators became aware of Thomas Sophonow. Thomas Sophonow resembled the suspect described by the witnesses who'd seen Barb's killer. He was tall, 6'4", in the proper weight range, wearing glasses, similar facial hair, a Fu Manchu mustache. He was from BC, and he'd been in Winnipeg at the time of the murder. Cops learned that there was a stressor, too. Sophonow had been in town to see his daughter, but had been denied that by his ex, the girl's mother. So according to studies in criminology, family-related stressors contribute significantly to violent crime by inducing psychological distress and emotional turmoil. Conflicts like domestic abuse, divorce, or custody disputes, as in this case, provoke intense emotions, which may lead to violent responses by some people. Eyewitnesses identified Thomas Sophonow as the man they had seen at Ideal Donut by way of photo and in-person police lineups.
So, question for you that you might not be able to answer. First of all, was it all of the witnesses that did this? Do you know how many?
All of the close witnesses.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's very strange.
And you know what? Listen, I'm not, obviously they were wrong, because you start, we tell the story that they got the wrong guy.
Yep.
But, and I'm not giving a hard time to people who were witnesses because it's how the human mind works, right? Like our memories are way more fallible than we think they are.
Yep. And it's why I call the episode More Than Meets the Eye.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
And so, and I'm sure that all of those witnesses thought they'd seen that guy, right?
And who knows how the police prepared them at that point in time. We know one of these people in this lineup is the guy, you know?
Yeah. And also our memories are bad. They really are, Mike. Like I can't even remember what I did yesterday, right?
Well, I had to go through a photo lineup once in my life to pick out the gentleman who had tried to abduct me and do nefarious, nasty things. And the photo lineup I was given was photos of him now. Yeah. Which,
That's kind of a different thing.
Oh, yeah, totally. But it speaks to the nature of memory as well. Other than being in a serious accident, his facial features wouldn't have changed that much. So he was there. I just couldn't recall it. The picture of him that I had in my mind did not reflect the pictures that I was shown. However, later on, I recalled, wait a minute, this guy had a weird haircut, and one of those people in that lineup had a strange haircut. I just wasn't left long enough with the photos to remember that detail. In a police interview, Thomas Sophonow admitted that he'd arrived from Vancouver late on the 22nd of December or early on the 23rd. He'd spent a few hours sleeping in a vacant apartment before searching for a friend he couldn't find. He visited his brother and sister-in-law, the Kleins, from 3 to 5 p.m. and tried to arrange a visit with his daughter around 5:30 p.m., which was unsuccessful. Later, he experienced brake trouble and went to a Canadian Tire on the Pembina Highway, where he interacted with Mrs. Peasgood and her daughter, and then bought gifts at a nearby Safeway. Despite an alibi confirmed by the Kleins, there was suspicion around Sophonow due to his admission of possibly being nearby the coffee shop where Barbara Stoppel was murdered between 8 and 9 p.m. He was interviewed twice by police, but these interviews were neither recorded nor detailed in verbatim notes, obscuring what transpired. And if you read the inquiry notes, it's really bad. It is really, really bad. Anyway, during his second interview, Thomas experienced highly aggressive and now deemed unacceptable interrogation techniques, including a strip search and an unnecessary anal cavity search. This intense and invasive interrogation was so traumatic that Thomas himself became convinced that he'd murdered Barbara despite it being impossible. Thomas was arrested and placed in a lockup where an undercover officer was positioned nearby, hoping Thomas would confess. However, Thomas did not confess, but he did demonstrate how the donut shop's door was locked, suggesting the police had shown him this during questioning, as he had an alibi proving his innocence. So, yeah, they showed him how the door locked and unlocked, but the undercover officer said, well, maybe he remembered that anyway, you know? So it was like evidence that shouldn't have been evidence.
Yeah, I mean, the treatment of this guy is outrageous.
Very much
so. It's completely outrageous, and if you can't see that, it's like, ugh. But also, there's not many ways you can lock and unlock a door. It doesn't seem like it's pivotal evidence. Like, you turn the key.
It might have locked in a certain way. Who knows?
Okay.
But, you know, there are people who would argue with you that would say, hey, you know what? This guy allegedly killed a 16-year-old girl, so they should treat him terribly anyway. And I'm kind of glad they're not the people doing the interrogations or making the laws. But that's what people say. They will say, do whatever you need to do to get it out of this guy.
Yeah, would you have voted for Stalin? Because that's where it ends up.
You're right. Yeah. Additionally, a key piece of physical evidence linking Thomas to the crime was that piece of twine used to strangle Barbara found near the crime scene. This twine, according to witnesses, was discarded by the killer. Two companies were considered as possible sources of the twine. Powers Twine identified it as their product, whereas Berkeley, which added a tracer to their twine, did not. A critical $100 test to detect the tracer was inexplicably never conducted. This test could have identified the twine as Berkeley's, potentially exonerating Thomas early on by placing the source of the twine locally in Portage la Prairie rather than associating it with Thomas in Vancouver. This oversight contributed significantly to the wrongful suspicion and stigma Thomas endured for years. Thomas was tried 3 times for a murder he did not commit. His first trial started on October 18, 1982, but ended in a mistrial due to the jury's inability to reach a unanimous verdict. His second trial began on February 21, 1983, resulting in a conviction later overturned by the Manitoba Court of Appeal due to inadequate presentation of his defense. Thomas's third trial, in 1985, also concluded with a conviction, again overturned by the appeal court citing unfairness. Ultimately, he was acquitted in December 1985 after spending nearly 4 years in custody. Despite his acquittal, Thomas faced significant social stigma and threats to his safety. After years of effort to clear his name on June 8, 2000, 15 years later, the Winnipeg Police Service officially stated that he was not responsible for the murder. The Attorney General of Manitoba formally apologized, and a commission of inquiry led by retired Supreme Court Justice Peter Corey was established to investigate the miscarriage of justice. During the inquiry into his wrongful conviction, Thomas Sophonow revealed the profound impact his experience had on him. He frequently displayed anger towards his legal team and the legal system, dismissing several lawyers after he was warned that his own directives would be obstructive. Sophonow shared his harrowing experiences candidly, including the emotional and psychological toll of being ostracized by his community and incarcerated in a harsh prison environment. He was often moved to tears when discussing his time in segregation and the stress-related health issues he faced. Furthermore, the personal repercussions extended to his family. His house was firebombed, and he recounted a poignant moment when his daughter, having seen a news clip about the crime, asked him if he was a murderer. These experiences left him deeply scarred. No kidding.
And the people that you mentioned about, people say treat them whatever way you want to get this. Because those are probably also the types of people that were firebombing an innocent man's house. Mm-hmm. And that's the crux of the issue, right?
Right.
So, and we have social media now, and so often, you and I've spoken about this, right? And I think you've actually had to, even on our own social feed, sort of get rid of stuff where people come in saying, I know this person did it, right? It's like, well, you know what?
You actually don't know that.
You Googled something, you saw some memes and some other posts.
That's
like,
right.
I suggest you stick to your day job.
Right. But people can't. They think they listen to a true crime podcast like the one that we are doing right now, and they think that's the be-all and end-all. That's why I do the disclaimer at the beginning. We're not journalists. We're not lawyers. We're not anything to do with the law. We're just telling a story. We're telling a story, and we're not even sure entirely whether or not these facts are correct.
We're only involved with the law of awesomeness, Mike.
Okay. Oh, boy. The inquiry's findings, released on November 5th, 2001, highlighted severe flaws in police procedures and the judicial system, including the use of unreliable witness testimony and police tunnel vision. The inquiry made several recommendations for reforming police investigative techniques and using forensic evidence in court to prevent future miscarriages of justice. Thomas Sophonow was compensated $2.3 million. However, that's a pittance for the injustice he endured. But who then killed Barbara Stoppel? There had been another suspect. According to the Sophonow inquiry, before Thomas's arrest, Terry Samuel Arnold was briefly considered a suspect in the murder of Barbara Stoppel due to several links to her and the crime scene. Arnold visited St. Boniface Hospital on December 28th, 1981, a day before Barbara died, inquiring about Barbara's condition, and even met her mother, claiming to know Barbara from the Ideal Donut Shop.
That's really chilling.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he was there checking to see if she was talking yet, probably.
Probably.
Right? And imagine if her mother wasn't there and he got into the room himself. Imagine if he had somehow slipped into that room. Maybe he would have finished her off.
Who knows?
That's chilling. That's dark. That's some dark poutine right there.
That is. Terry Arnold already had a dark past. Very dark. He was arrested 3 times between June and October 1981, consistently noted for wearing a cowboy hat. During his last arrest, he was detained alongside Stuart Dickey, who later confirmed that Arnold frequently wore a dark brown cowboy hat, adorned with gold tokens matching the description in a composite drawing linked to the murder case. Additionally, a recent intercepted phone conversation revealed Arnold denying ownership of such a hat to his mother, who insisted he had left it on a closet shelf. Despite Arnold's denials, many family members and friends remembered him wearing the hat, and 2 independent tips during the initial investigation pointed to Arnold's resemblance to the composite and his possession of the hat. One tip came from a male accomplice who highlighted Arnold's violent nature and his appearance matching the composite sketch. Another came from a manager at the Salisbury House restaurant who noted that Arnold stopped wearing the cowboy hat and switched to a black toque after the murder. Further investigation found eyewitnesses, including Arnold's stepmother, recalling him wearing a black wrapper-style toque after the incident. Arnold, who was released from the remand center on December 15, 1981, 8 days before the murder, told police during questioning later that he had not received his cowboy hat back upon release and that it was mistakenly shipped with his accomplice's belongings to the East. He claimed he had not worn a cowboy hat since his release, contradicting other witness accounts. Despite resembling the composite sketch of the suspect and matching descriptions like wearing glasses and having acne, his potential alibi could not confirm his whereabouts during the critical time. Arnold admitted to having a crush on Barbara and lived near the donut shop without a verifiable alibi for the night of the murder. However, the investigation into Terry Arnold was not thoroughly pursued. Significant steps like comparing his fingerprints to those found at the crime scene were overlooked. This oversight was later acknowledged as a failure in the investigation, indicative of the broader issues within the police department at the time, such as a lack of leadership and coordination in the case. Today, such oversights are less likely due to advances in investigative practices and awareness of cognitive biases like tunnel vision. After Barb Stoppel's murder, Terry Arnold was suspected of at least 2 other murders, convicted of one, and was involved in other crimes against women, girls, and children, receiving several more convictions along the way. He'd been in and out of jail. In 1987, Denise Lapierre, a 17-year-old girl, met a tragic fate in Calgary, Alberta. It was shortly after her high school graduation party when Denise's path intersected with tragedy. Her body was discovered in a dimly lit back alley, a place that should have been inconspicuous but now bore witness to unspeakable horror. The details surrounding her death remained hauntingly elusive. She and Terry Arnold were living in close proximity at the time. Despite extensive efforts by law enforcement, the evidence required for prosecution in Denise Lapierre's case remained elusive. The Calgary Police Service had always hoped to bring Terry Arnold to justice for this homicide, but the legal process proved challenging. There was another girl, Christine Brown. She was 16 when she met a horrifying fate near Karameas, British Columbia. Her life was brutally taken, and her family and community were left in shock and grief. Authorities launched an intensive investigation to unravel the truth behind Christine's death. The spotlight fell on Terry Samuel Arnold, a man with a history of serious crimes. Arnold had been previously convicted of sexual assault in Chilliwack in 1988 and was also a suspect in the disappearance of a teenager from Cultus Lake during the same year. However, it was the murder of Christine Brown that brought him to the forefront of law enforcement's attention. During a sting operation, he chillingly confessed to killing Christine Brown. On April 9, 1997, the RCMP initiated a Mr. Big undercover operation targeting Arnold for the murder of Christine. In the operation, undercover officers posed as Hells Angels members and integrated Arnold into their fabricated criminal activities, which Arnold found lucrative and enjoyable. The operation culminated in a staged meeting where the supposed Hells Angels boss claimed they had RCMP contacts aware of Arnold's guilt in Christine Brown's murder. To secure his full inclusion in the gang, Arnold was told they needed someone else to confess to the crime. They proposed using a dying prison inmate who was willing to take the blame. The inmate, of course, was another RCMP officer, wired for sound. Terry Arnold was coerced into providing details that only Christine Brown's killer would have known. Ultimately, the sting was successful. Arnold confessed on videotape to raping and murdering Christine Brown. He even assisted RCMP undercover officers in locating her remains and a shoe in British Columbia. His motive? Christine had refused to have sex with him. On May 18, 1997, Terry Arnold was arrested and charged with the murder of Christine Brown.
You know, of course, I'm happy that they caught him for the murder of this poor girl, because she was a girl. She was 16, right?
Right.
But I need to point out, you know, everyone's going to roll their eyes. I see everyone rolling their eyes listening to this. A bad interrogation at a police station is frowned upon, and everyone yells they didn't do it right. It was unfair.
Yeah.
And when undercover cops are in jail posing as criminals to try to catch them out, and the justice system finds it's dodgy as well, and judges throw stuff out all the time.
Mm-hmm.
All of that is kind of, for me, a mini version, or I'll call it a Mr. Small, of a Mr. Big sting.
Sure. Yeah.
It's the same stuff. It's just out in the wild.
Yeah. And
I'm telling you, Mike, Mr. Big's going to bite us in the ass one of these days, and mark my words, there'll be one case that sets off a domino effect, and there's going to be a slew of appeals.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Terry Arnold faced trial in Kelowna in October 1999. He was charged and convicted with first-degree murder. However, his conviction was later overturned and the charge was stayed. Despite this setback, the impact of his violent actions reverberated far beyond the courtroom. Terry Arnold's criminal record extended beyond Christine Brown's case. His actions left a trail of devastation affecting multiple lives and communities. in prison at Mission Institution in Mission, BC, Terry Arnold was interviewed on March 9, 2000 as part of the Sophonow inquiry. Terry Samuel Arnold was identified as a sociopath, very high on the Hare psychopathy checklist, and a pathological liar from the age of 15, beginning during his time at the Seven Oaks Detention Center. His consistent behavior included frequent lying, which served to minimize and rationalize his actions while blaming others. The report on the interview outlined several distinct behavioral patterns exhibited by Terry Arnold, highlighting his tendencies and methods that indicate deceit and manipulation. His interactions with the detectives painted a picture of a typical psychopath. Arnold frequently minimized the severity of his actions or outright denied responsibility. He justified his behaviors in ways that attempted to rationalize them, often shifting the blame to external factors or other individuals. When faced with accusations or evidence that threatened his narrative, Arnold became aggressive and attempted to discredit the source of the threat. This was evident in how he attacked the credibility of others who might have incriminating information against him. Arnold's statements were noted for their complexity and detail, typical of fabricated stories. He constructed elaborate alibis and explanations that required significant cognitive effort to maintain, indicating a high level of deceit. Arnold's accounts throughout the interviews often contained contradictions. He might say one thing and later provide a different version of events, a common indicator of falsehood. Consistent with his diagnosis as a sociopath, Arnold displayed a notable lack of genuine remorse or empathy for others. His emotional responses were often inappropriate or subdued relative to the context of the conversation. Terry Arnold adeptly manipulated information to serve his ends. He selectively recalled details that supported his version of events, while conveniently forgetting incriminating information. Although he was a pathological liar, his lies were not random but strategically placed. He lied to protect himself from detection and accountability, carefully calculating what he could deny outright and what he needed to explain away with more lies. Arnold consistently failed to take responsibility for his actions, and character assessments describe him as highly untrustworthy. He never admitted to having killed Barb Stoppel. His M.O. remained deny, deny, deny. He carried on that way until the end of his life. Terry Arnold was eventually released, and in late March 2005, his body was found in a Victoria, BC apartment. He had died by suicide using an overdose of drugs and alcohol. In the weeks leading up to his death, the Victoria Police issued a public advisory regarding Terry Arnold's release from a local jail. His release followed a 12-day sentence for violating the conditions of his bail related to child pornography charges. He left a 3-page suicide note denying responsibility for killing anyone, and according to a CBC article, blamed the media for harassing him. So a narcissist to the end.
So he is a convicted murderer. Why would he get a 12-day sentence only, violating conditions of his bail?
Related to child pornography? Great questions, Matthew.
That seems like a very light sentence for child pornography.
Well, in Canadian justice, a lot of times each crime is taken on its own, and there's not like a cumulative history of criminal behavior unless there's a dangerous offender application. And in his case, that didn't happen. So,
yeah, I'm upset that
he continued to do the shitty things that he did.
And that he killed himself because there's so many unanswered questions that maybe could have got to eventually, and some families would have had some closure, and our good man Thomas would have had some more closure as well.
Yep.
With somebody, the right person, being put in jail for that crime.
Was Terry Arnold a serial killer? In 2018, Dorena Green told APTN News about a harrowing run-in that she had had with Terry Arnold when she was only 15 years old. At 15, Dorena was a runaway, distancing herself from her parents and experimenting with alcohol while staying with friends. During a dinner at a friend's house, she met Terry Arnold, who was visiting with her friend's uncle. Arnold offered her a place to stay and drove her to his nearby trailer the next day. Upon entering the trailer, Green immediately felt uneasy. A disturbing movie was playing on TV, there was sexual assault in it, and guns were visibly laid out on the table. Realizing the danger of her situation, she found herself effectively trapped. Arnold then sexually assaulted her. She tried to scream, but then he started to strangle her with his hands. She completely shut down after that, and Arnold stopped for some reason. Dorina and Arnold got into his car and drove into the mountains above Chilliwack, just 10 minutes away. Dorina was numb from the initial attack. They parked and walked into the bush together. Arnold told Dorina that she wouldn't be coming back and again tried to strangle her, his arm around her neck. She begged for her life while Terry Arnold told her a few of the horrible things he'd done to other girls. She didn't struggle physically, and after some more ranting about his past, Terry Arnold stopped and let Dorina go. Today, she's a proud mother of 3 children and 4 grandchildren. She's found solace in art, which she considers therapeutic, and has also turned to traditional indigenous healing methods to cope with the trauma she experienced. Despite her recovery, she admits she is still unsure why she survived the ordeal. And the only person to answer that question is the guy who's dead again.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad she was able to, she's going to carry this for all of her life, but sounds like she's put in the work. She's put in the work to heal from it.
Right.
So I hope she is. Yeah.
Yeah. Doing something creative is a great way to heal. That's what this sort of started as for me, trying to do something creative to get over some of the stuff that I had gone through in my life. So Thomas Sophonow resides in New West, British Columbia, just across the bridge from us, with his second wife and their 3 children. Diagnosed with post-traumatic stress syndrome, a condition that may persist indefinitely, Sophonow has opted not to return to full-time employment.
Yeah, I feel for this guy, and I was glad he was vindicated in the end, but he went through a lot. And unlike the murder victims, he's still living, and he's had to deal with all that stuff he went through so unfairly.
Right.
And I'm glad. It makes me happy that there was the right outcome in the end for him. But how could you trust the system or the country that you live in after that's done to you, or your neighbors, or people that knew you, and people that ended up firebombing your place? He's gone through hell, and all I do is wish him the best. And I'm hoping he can put some of this behind him one way or the other.
Me too. And that's it for Dark Poutine episode 315, More Than Meets the Eye, The Murder of Barbara Stoppel. That's right. It's time for voicemails. You can leave us a message at 1-877-327-5786 or 1-877-DARK-PTN. We'd love to hear from you. Let's see who called us this week. Alrighty, let's listen to our first voicemail. Don't know who it's from, but we've got one.
Hey guys, I'm just calling. It's been quite some time. I'm the guy who had the family member who went over the falls. God, I'm so terrible at this. Go shit in your hat. Love you guys. Bye.
If that's all you got to say, that's fine.
That's awesome. And it sounds like it was raining. I thought I heard windshield wipers.
Yeah, that's exactly what you heard. He was probably in traffic. He was probably, in a traffic jam, and it's raining. And
I'm going to call Matthew and Mike.
Exactly. Let's just give those turkeys a call, because I'm bored.
Thanks for calling, dude. That's great. I love that.
Much appreciated. Hopefully, it stopped raining wherever you are. We've got one more voicemail.
Hi, Mike and Matthew. This is Gina calling from southern Pennsylvania. Been listening to you guys since the beginning, and I absolutely adore you. I'm trying so hard not to giggle while I'm listening to the whole tits and teeth discussion. As a boob haver, I cannot think of anything I would hate more than a dentist / mammography office, regardless of how clever the name is. But love the show. Love you guys so much. Love seeing Eggo and Waffles and Steve in the Facebook group and in the Yumber Yard. Keep up the good work and go poop in your toque. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I was thinking maybe the male version of Tits and Teeth, the store, would be a prostate specialist and something to do with footwear, and it would be Cocks and Socks.
And she's from Pennsylvania. And I love that saying by the Pennsylvania Dutch. It's for nice. Like, what are your boobs for? They're for nice.
They're for nice.
They're for nice.
Yeah. I think that Tits and Teeth, that would be a terrible place, because nobody likes to go to the dentist, and every woman who I have ever met, or every boob haver who I've ever met, loathes going to have a mammography. So yeah, it's a terrible idea, but it's you could kill two birds with one stone. Just do two things you hate in the same day and get it over with.
Let's take this opportunity to remind people to get their boobs checked.
Yeah.
It carries in my family, and there's someone in my family that until the age, I think, of 60, never got checked, and until I hounded her to do it.
Yeah.
So it's important.
It is important.
Look at me doing a little
public service.
Yeah.
What do you think she does there in Pennsylvania? It's something where she can't giggle. So does she work in a funeral home maybe? Or
Oh, gosh. Can you imagine?
Yeah. Listening to Dark Poutine in a funeral home.
People have been known to laugh in funerals, not because they're being disrespectful. It's just all the emotion.
Yep.
I think she's a furniture maker.
Okay. What kind of furniture?
Like shaker furniture type stuff.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I picture everyone in Pennsylvania doing stuff like that. I don't know why. I know nothing about Pennsylvania, but I think of like the Pennsylvania.
Well, there's a few
Dutch
big cities there.
And I know, but I always think of like arts and crafts in Pennsylvania. Literally no idea why.
What about Rocky from Philadelphia running up those stairs?
I had no idea that Philadelphia was in Pennsylvania.
And Pittsburgh too.
I had no idea.
Oh boy.
Well, I kind of did. Yeah, no, I knew kind of. Yeah, anyway, I know nothing about Pennsylvania.
There you go.
Except these things you just told me.
So we need to learn more.
If you're from Pennsylvania, can you call in?
Yeah.
More people and tell
us a cool story from the history of Pennsylvania. Yeah, we're interested.
I want to know this.
We know about the Liberty Bell and all that kind of stuff, but
is that Pennsylvania as well?
Yes, Philadelphia.
That cracked bell thing?
Yes.
Okay. Is that the one is that the Taco Bell bell? Is Taco Bell from Pennsylvania?
No. Okay. This is all Matthew. This is not
were
me.
Laverne and Shirley in Pennsylvania?
They were in Wisconsin, Milwaukee.
Is that near Wyoming?
No. Oh boy. Well, it's in the same country.
Okay. See, I'm not far off.
Yeah, right.
It's south of us somewhere.
Yep. I've driven through it.
I know it's south and east.
That's it for this week's voicemails. Again, you can leave us one at 1-877-327-5786 or 1-877-DARK-PTN. We'd love to hear from you, even if it is just to say hi and to tell us to go shit in our hats. If you're stumped for what to chat with us about, a quick story is welcome. All right, we are moving on to Donut Money donors and Patreon. First up, we have a patron this week.
Yay!
And her name is Tracy Sands, and Tracy is from Shelburne, Nova Scotia, the South Shore, my old stomping grounds, Shelburne.
I love the Nova Scotians treat us well.
Yes, they do. Nova Scotians, well, everybody treats us well, really.
Yeah.
We have a lot of people who treat us well. And even people from outside of Canada seem to like it, as we evidenced by a phone call from Pennsylvania and other phone calls from Florida and New Jersey.
I love our phone calls.
Me too. Yeah, I do too. I wish more people would call.
Except for the haters that we don't play.
We've had like 2.
Oh, yeah, but they're
Yeah, exactly.
Except for the haters that we don't play.
Yeah, exactly. So, what does Tracy Sands do there in Shelburne, Nova Scotia, Matthew?
What does Tracy Sands do in Shelburne, Nova Scotia?
Mm-hmm.
I think Tracy Sands owns a shop that does high tea. And I'm saying that because I'm taking my mother to high tea on Monday.
Oh, where are you going?
There's one. I was going to go to like one of the posh hotels, but they're all booked on the weekend. So I'm taking her to one of the places in Vancouver. I think it's called Neverland High Tea or something like that.
Oh, that one's nice. I've been there.
Oh, is it good?
Yep, it's nice.
So I'm taking my mom to high tea on Monday.
It's more afternoon tea than it is high tea, but...
Well, high tea is afternoon.
Well, yeah, I think it's the style of food that you get too.
Yeah, so Tracy owns like a really cool, it's kind of like Wizard of Oz. So she's decorated it all like Wizard of Oz, like really sort of lush, and there's high tea, and she has a little shop, and it's like a clapboard painted pink on the outside shop, like ye old worldy. And and the crab cakes are like what they're famous for. There
you go. That's great. I like the little sandwiches with no crusts on. The little white bread Sammies. They're really
But after I booked this, I realized I'm only eating one meal a day right now, trying to lose weight. So I'm gonna have to like eat a lot of high tea and not have dinner that day.
Yeah, it's probably better to eat in the middle of the day anyway. Alrighty. So that's it for patrons, but we do have a PayPal donor, a donut money donor.
PayPal,
and
donut
it is from somebody who has donated before.
Yay!
It's Lisa Skyheart Martial Art, and
yes, Lisa,
yes, skyheartart.com or at Skyheart Art. Sorry, at Skyheart Art on Instagram. I'm looking at her Instagram right now.
I remember what the first time she did it, we looked her up, and I was like, wow, she's actually really good. I've really liked her stuff.
Yeah, she does really nice stuff.
Like sometimes people send send us links, and you're like, yeah, okay, but I'm like, okay, actually, this is good shit.
Yeah,
it's really good. Take a look at it.
It is good. So SkyheartArt.com.
SkyheartArt.com.
Yeah. And Lisa says, not for donuts, donut money. So I guess she wants us to have something other than donuts. Maybe
broccoli.
Broccoli. Yes, exactly. I've got a head of cauliflower that I need to deal with before it goes bad. So
I have a good recipe for you.
Oh, send me.
I will.
Yeah. I've been eating better as well. Both of us have lost some weight.
22 pounds and counting, Mikey.
Yeah, for you, that's pretty great.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, you look good, man.
Another 22 to go. Like I said in the Yum Yard, I've lost 30. I can't see it. Can you see it?
I can see it.
I mean, I was joking the other day when I pointed out, oh, look at me, because I was like hoping you'd say something, but
I can totally see it.
Good.
I've lost 7.6. So I'm still working. I'm still new at this.
You lost more before, though.
Yeah, I lost 40 pounds.
There you go. So now you're continuing on.
That was actually more like 50.
Yeah, 50.
40.
Okay.
So I'm like, totally, I've lost 47 pounds.
Good for you.
Yeah, I still have ways to go.
Health, darling.
Health, darling, health. Tits and teeth. Oh, boy. Thanks to all our patrons and donut money donors, past and present, for your generosity. It helps to keep the show going. You can become a patron of Dark Poutine at patreon.com/darkpoutine. For a one-time donation, you can send us donut money via PayPal using our email address, darkpoutinepodcast@gmail.com. If you don't already subscribe to the show, it would mean a lot if you did. You can easily find Dark Poutine on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows. If you haven't gotten yours yet, my book, Murder, Madness, and Mayhem, is available to order via a link on the Dark Poutine website. And speaking of darkpoutine.com, please check it out for show notes and other cool stuff. We'd appreciate it if you took the time to give Dark Poutine a like or a follow on Facebook and Instagram. Most importantly, thank you for listening, and tell your friends about us. Word of mouth is a powerful thing. And that is it for this episode of Dark Poutine. So until next time, you know what to do. Don't forget to be a good egg and not a bad apple.
Goodbye, y'all.
Bye.
I said to my parents, don't trust her. They wouldn't listen.
Every family has a secret.
Joy Delaney, mother of 4, has gone missing.
From the author of Big Little Lies comes a chilling new mystery to W.
You are an emotional chaos sinkhole, Amy, and I'm sick of it!
Starring Annette Bening.
Nobody can break your heart like your own children.
And Sam Neill.
She will come back. Here we go. Strap in.
Apples Never Fall. All new Thursdays only on W. Stream on Stack TV.